I want to tell you about the year I turned 90 and finally admitted that I had outlived almost everyone I ever loved. My wife, 31 years gone, two of my children, every man I ever fished beside or argued with or stood next to at a graveside. I sat on my porch step that morning with cold coffee going colder, and I counted, not the graves. I stopped counting those a long time ago, but the reasons I was still getting up. There were 7. 7 quiet reasons I never once laid down and gave up. And when I finished counting them, I did not feel proud, and I did not feel sorry for myself. I felt honest, maybe for the first time in years. So come close to the fire a while, if you have the time. Sit down the way you would sit with an old neighbor who is not in any hurry. I am not telling you that I stopped missing them. I am not telling you that I got strong, or that the ache wore itself smooth, or that I found some trick that makes a quiet house stop being quiet. It is none of that. What I found was smaller than that, and it held better. 7 small things a man can do with his 2 hands and his 1 heart after the world he grew up in has gone on ahead of him without him. Will you let me hand them to you? My grandmother said something to me when I was 9 years old that I did not understand until I was 80. We were carrying water up from the low place, and I asked her why the old ones stayed so long after their friends were gone. She set the bucket down in the grass and said, "Nobody is left behind by the years. A person is only left standing, and standing is a job." She said the last tree on a hill is not a leftover. It is what the hill leans on when the wind comes. Have you ever thought of yourself that way? I had not. Then she picked the bucket back up and said the rest of it, the part I have carried for 80 years since. She said, "A fire does not end when the wood is gone. A fire ends when nobody thinks to carry the last coal." And that is the whole of what I'm going to tell you tonight, only broken into 7 pieces so it will fit in your hands. The first confession is the smallest of the 7, and it is the one that kept me alive the hardest. I always kept one task that needed me in the morning. Never a big one. For 11 years it was a gutter I did not fix properly on purpose, so that I would have to go out and set the bucket under it before the rain came. Then it was a bird feeder. Then it was bread. My grandfather used to say the river keeps moving because the sea is calling its name, and a river that stops being called becomes a pond, and a pond goes green. A man is no different. Something has to say his name before the sun is all the way up. There was a man in our valley named Samuel who buried his wife and then sat down in a chair and stayed there. Nobody could move him. What moved him was a half-blind dog that could not find its own water bowl. That dog needed him at 6 in the morning, so Samuel got up at 6 in the morning, and he did that for 9 more years. He always said the dog carried him, not the other way around. I did not fix anything large. I only made sure the morning had a reason to ask for me. What asks for you? Before I give you the second one, let me set something down beside you gently, and then we will go straight on. So many of you have written to me asking how a person even begins. Where do you put your hands when everything your days were built around is gone? I could not answer every letter, so some of it got written down instead in a small book called The Native Way. It is the old teachings, the ones my grandmother handed me beside that water bucket, set out plain enough to use on an ordinary Tuesday. Read one and sit with it overnight. It is there if your heart wants it. There is no pressure at all, none, and I am here with you either way, whether you ever open a page of it or not. Now, let me give you the second confession because it is the one people get wrong most often, and getting it wrong cost me 4 years. The second confession is that I let the grief run all the way through me, and then I let it settle into gratitude. I did not do that the first time. When my wife died, I did what men my age were taught to do. I got busy. I mended fences that did not need mending. I told everybody I was fine, and the grief went underground and came back sideways for 4 years as a temper I did not recognize in myself. My grandmother had a saying for it that I ignored until it was too late to ignore. She said, "Grief is the spring rain. Do not curse it, and do not pitch your tent in it. Let it soak all the way down to the roots, and then let it pass." Both halves of that matter. Cursing it keeps it up on the surface where it turns everything to mud. Living inside it keeps you wet the rest of your life. But if you let it go down, really down, the crying at the sink, the talking out loud in an empty kitchen, something happens after a while that I cannot fully explain to you. The grief does not leave. It turns into thankfulness that she was ever in the house at all. Same water, different season. Have you let yours soak down, or have you been holding an umbrella over it for years? The third confession is that I never stopped saying their names out loud. People will tell you that is morbid. It is not morbid. It is the most ordinary thing in the world, and we have simply grown shy about it. I say my wife's name at the table. I say my son's name when I see a truck the color of the one he drove. When the great-grandchildren come, I tell them about people they never met until those people have faces in their minds. My grandmother said a fire remembers every log it ever ate, and it remembers them in the heat it is still giving you. You are warm right now off wood that burned an hour ago. Nothing that fed a fire is wasted, and nothing that fed a life is gone. There was a woman we all called Grandmother Weaver who set an extra cup at every meal for 50 years. Not for a ghost. She was very clear about that, and she would correct you. For the habit of remembering. She said an unsaid name only gets heavier, and a said name gets lighter, and a house where the dead are spoken of kindly is a house where the living are not so afraid of dying. Whose name have you stopped saying? Say it tomorrow out loud in your own kitchen and notice what it does to the room. The fourth confession is that I made myself into a pair of steady old hands for the young. This one reached me when nothing else could. At 81, I had decided I was no use to anybody. Then a boy down the road needed somebody to hold a board while he cut it, and I could still hold a board. That was the entire contribution. And holding that board did more for me than a year of good advice. My grandfather said the old pine does not envy the sapling. It breaks the wind for it. That is its whole work at the end, and it is not a small work, and the sapling does not have to thank it for the pine to go on doing it. We had a man everybody called Old Man Standing Pine on account of he stood. Every school morning, in whatever weather there was, he stood at the bottom of the steps and said good morning to each child by name. That was all he did. When he died, grown men of 40 stood out in the road and cried, because for a good many of them, he had been the only person who ever said their name kindly before 9 in the morning. What could your hands still hold steady for somebody? The fifth confession is harder, and I put it off for a decade. I forgave the years for everything they took from me. I was angry at time. I want to be honest about that with you. Angry that it took my wife at 62, took my hearing, took the men I played cards with, and left me sitting here with all my memory and none of my people. I would lie awake and go down the list like a man counting money he no longer has. My grandfather said a man who lies awake counting his wounds has no hands left in the morning to plant. And that was it exactly. Every hour I spent adding up what the years stole was an hour I did not spend on the one living thing in front of me. Forgiving the years does not mean saying it was fair. It was not fair. It means setting the ledger down, because no man can hold a ledger and a shovel at the same time. What is on your ledger tonight? I set mine down on a Tuesday in March. Nothing dramatic happened. I simply slept, and in the morning my hands were free. The sixth confession is that I never stopped letting the small joys in, even in the worst years, especially in the worst years. Frost making its little ferns on the window glass, a child laughing at something that is not funny, coffee on a cold porch when the steam comes off it just right. There was a long stretch when I felt guilty about all of it, as though enjoying a warm cup was disloyal to the ones who could not. My grandmother said the canyon that holds the deepest shadow is the very same canyon that catches the one gold hour at the end of the day, and it does not apologize for either one. Deep places take the light differently. That is all that is happening. There was a man named Walter, a hard man, a man who had not shown a feeling in public in 60 years. One October the geese went over, that whole long noisy string of them, and Walter took his hat off and stood there with the tears running down into his collar and never said one word about it afterward. He was not sad. He had only left a door open, and the world came through it. Are your doors open? Or have you been keeping them shut out of loyalty to people who would want you warm? And the seventh confession is the one it took me all 90 years to arrive at, and it is the one I most want to leave in your hands. I came to believe I was kept here on purpose, not spared, not overlooked, not a leftover the world forgot to clear away, kept, handed a job. My grandmother's word for it was the last coal. She said you can lose the whole fire, every log, every flame, all of it down to gray ash. And if one coal is still living, the fire is not over. It is waiting. The last coal is not the end of a fire. It is the thing the next fire gets passed from. There was a man named Eli in our valley who was certain he was useless. 79 years old, everything he had been good at behind him, telling anybody who would listen that he was just taking up a chair by the window. Then one spring, a young man he barely remembered came to his door and told him that one steady story Eli had told him years back on a bad night was the reason he got through one hard winter alive. Eli did not even remember telling it. He had been carrying a coal for somebody and had no idea he was doing it. Do you know what you are carrying? Neither did he. That is rather the point. Now I want to be careful with something here, because I have watched this teaching go wrong in good people. Counting these 7 was not the same as scolding myself for all the years I did none of them. There were whole seasons when I did every one of them badly. There was a winter I did not say a single name out loud, did not open a single door, and sat in a chair very much like Samuel's with the curtains drawn. I am not ashamed of that winter. A man is allowed a winter. Naming a thing is not hating yourself for it. Do you hear the difference? And hear what these 7 truly are, because I have been calling them confessions all night, and that word is far too small for them. This is not a confession of weakness. It is not a list of the places where I failed. It is not an old man's apology for still being here. It is growth. Every one of the 7 is a place where I grew, slowly, the way an old tree grows, ring by quiet ring where nobody can see it happening. And what looked from the outside like the wreck of my life was the growing itself going on underneath. Naming a thing is only turning the lamp toward it so you can see the shape of what you are dealing with. And every one of these 7 has a door in it, every single one, and a door only ever means the one thing. You can walk back through. You can start saying the names again on a Thursday afternoon at 88 years old. You can pick up one small task tomorrow that needs you. The years do not lock behind a person. They only look locked from the chair. And I will tell you the truth of it. I did not do these 7 things and then survive. I survived and then slowly found out these were the 7 things I had been doing all along. So let me gather this up for you now, the way my grandmother gathered the ends of her shawl before she stood to go. 1. Keep one small task that needs you in the morning. 2. Let the grief run all the way through, and then let it settle into gratitude. 3. Keep saying their names out loud. 4. Be a steady pair of old hands for somebody young. 5. Forgive the years for what they took. 6. Let the small joys in, the frost, the laugh, the coffee on the cold porch. 7. Believe you were kept here on purpose. Now turn each one back on your own life, gently. Does anything call your name before the sun is up? Have you let the rain soak all the way down, or only run off? When did you last say the name? Whose board could you still hold? Are you still counting wounds at 2 in the morning? And what are you carrying right now that you do not know you are carrying? And if you are sitting there thinking, but I am 84 or 91, or I have been in this chair 6 years already, is it too late for me? Then hear this from an old man who has buried nearly everyone he loved. No, nothing is lost. Not one thing of it. The coal in you is still living, or you would not have stayed this long inside a story about grief told by a stranger. You are not the last one left over. You are the one the fire got handed to, and the handing is not finished yet. So let me say the last of it all in one breath, and then I will let you go. Tell me down in the comments below which of the 7 hit closest to home for you tonight. Just the number is plenty, and I do read every one of them. And if this fire was good company tonight, then stay a while, sit with me again tomorrow, and we will put another log on and keep this going a little longer, you and I. Good night, and thank you for keeping an old man company.